Tad is the VP Business Intelligence and Performance for Experient, and works with organizations in using their data to drive improved business performance. Please welcome Tad Lurie.
Can you all hear me okay? Do I need to turn it now? Okay. Doesn't sound loud up here, but it's loud back there. Fabulous. So, we've covered a lot of ground today. I'll do what I can to wrap some of it together. But I think there's definitely been some threads throughout the day that we can capitalize on here. And one of those is obviously around data. I try generally not to use the word data with my association clients. As soon as I say data, they think technology, and as soon as they think technology, they stop listening. Can't imagine why. So I use business, because a lot of times we want to be talking to the executive suite, and they love the word business. They also love the word money. So you put those two things together, you're in like Flynn. The one thing I do know about associations, for those of you who don't know me, prior to my time at Experient, I was actually the chief operating officer at Educause, following the illustrious Garth Jordan, who before me was the chief operating officer at Educause. So we have that shared history. Before that, I was a chief information officer for American Wind Energy, American Health Lawyers, and some others. So I've been on the association side for about 15 years before I came over to the vendor side. So trust me, when I say I tell association stories, those are real stories of people I know or even me. And the one thing that we know about associations, anyone want to take a guess? Champagne taste on a beer budget? Anyone heard that? Yeah. Why would I put up a picture of a golf club? There's a universe of, and I will use the word data here because it's really the only word we can use. If there's one thing we've learned today, it's that the universe of association data is huge. Whether you're using an association management system or not, whether you've braved the waters that Peggy has and gone out and tried without it, you have many systems, you have many places where data is stored, and you have a metric ton of data in general. So the reason I put up a golf club, and specifically a picture of the sweet spot on a golf club, is actually twofold. The first is the theme that we're talking about is work smarter, not harder. Now, my 11-year-old likes to go in the backyard and hit golf balls, and man, he works hard. He gets out there and he swings as hard as he can. For those of us who know a little bit more about golf and about the physics of a golf club, what's important isn't necessarily how hard you swing or the club head speed, but where you hit it. It's all about hitting it on the sweet spot of the club. And you don't have to swing hard. If you hit it on the sweet spot and you let the club do the work, it really, really goes. Now, also, when you're talking about the voluminous amount of data that we have, it's not about looking at all of it. There's probably too much. So one of the things that I like to focus on when we're talking about working smarter, not harder, is don't try and look at all your data at once. It's very much like what we do in other areas when we take on 100 projects and we do all of them at a relatively mediocre level, rather than focusing on 10, as Garth was pointing out, focusing our resources on those and doing them really, really well. So when we're talking about leveraging data to do things differently, don't try and do everything differently. Eventually, your culture might catch up to you and you might be there. But at the beginning, you're going to want to pick a couple areas to focus on. One of the interesting things about data is, I'm going to use a phrase that you probably haven't heard yet today, at least. There are some times when you see something and then you can't unsee it. You know what I'm talking about? So whether it's a scene from a horror movie or something dumb that you did or that glass that you just pushed off and you're watching it tumble in slow motion. Interestingly enough, anyone know what this is? Go ahead, take a guess. Okay, close. It's like a seeing eye puzzle. You know those things and you hold the book and you hold it so far away from your face and then suddenly you can see the image. Who can do these? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, and you know how to do them. So you can pick up a book and do any seeing eye puzzle, pick it up, look at it, and you can see the image, right? I can't do these. I've never been able to see them. But the funny part is, I think it's like riding a bike. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. So if I give you a little help and say, well, that's the image you're supposed to be able to see, I mean, of course you can't do it because it's not the right distance and all that stuff, but do you imagine if you were holding the book that this would help? Some kind of guide, give you a sense of what you're looking for. You can start looking for the outline. It might make a little more sense. The reason that I'm putting these pictures up is that I think using data effectively in our organizations is a lot like this. Once you see it and you understand it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how business intelligence makes your business more effective, it's very hard to let go of that and to say, okay, well, I guess we'll do it the way that I know isn't as good. I guess we'll make the decisions without the supporting data. I guess we'll go ahead and try that and just hope it works. It seems kind of silly once you get to a point that you've done it, I'm not going to say the right way, but the way using business intelligence. So I've got one more example of this. Two people standing on the shore. Very nice. Yep. Who sees the baby? Yeah. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some guidance. Look for a baby. It's very, very large and his feet are in the upper right-hand corner. Who sees the baby now? Yes. Who can unsee the baby? If you look at this now, can you not see that? No, it's there. You know it's there, right? Same thing using business intelligence in your business. You can't unsee it. Once you know it's there, you know it's there. So the trick is knowing it's there. And that, as so many people today have pointed out, I think probably just about everybody, that's a cultural thing. This is something that our organizations need to just do more of. Thinking differently, approaching problems differently, approaching strategy and planning differently is something that we definitely need help with. So when you're coming towards these problems, and I'm going to give some specific instances and tell some stories, and we're going to go through some stuff together, I like to bring a number of different lenses. And I think of those lenses as different kinds of data. So when you're looking at these problems, also, again, think back to our other pictures of, the people on the shore and the seeing eye diagram. You have to look at it a little bit differently. Sometimes you have to tilt it, sometimes you have to, it's a mental state. So what happens is you'll start to realize that using business intelligence in one specific instance makes a lot of sense. And then suddenly the doors will open and you'll see all these other areas where, oh, wait, I can apply that same principle here and it's going to make things better. It's going to make things easier. It's going to make us work more efficiently. So that's the broad stuff. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics. I'm pretty sure I showed this slide the last time I was here, but it's so good I brought it back. Data should be at the heart of strategic decision-making in business. Forbes, they generally know what they're talking about. Notice this is 2016, so it's already 3 years old. Here's our poll. Does this automatically turn itself on? Go to the next slide. Oh, here we go. Okay. At your last strategic or longer-term planning discussion, what role did business intelligence play? Go in, give me a couple votes so I can at least see the answers and read them at you. Perfect. We don't need data. We know what our members want. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you've heard that, because I know you have. Someone mentioned BI at some point. We occasionally refer to past trends, mostly anecdotally, or BI was prepared beforehand and brought to the table to support, oh, come on, somebody put in there. Rob, help me out. You know a client that's put in, thank you. Wow, I'm surprised. Okay, we do refer to past trends is definitely taking the day, mostly anecdotally. So while anyone else is voting, I'll quickly explain the difference between anecdotal evidence and objective evidence. Anecdotal data is data you hear in stories. I usually use the example of the board member who comes in and says that there's not enough coffee, or that the session rooms are too cold, or that they don't think that anybody really wants X, Y, Z. That's anecdotal evidence. Objective evidence would be a member survey, or a behavioral measurement tool, or a specific number of registrants who had come to a meeting, or your retention rate over the last 3 years for a certain audience within your membership. That is objective data. We use it very, very differently. So I'm giving you a problem, and we're going to talk about the knee-jerk solution and what we do a lot of the time, and then we're going to talk about some other potential solutions that we could explore using business intelligence. So we're going from high-level strategy, theoretical, to something a little bit more concrete. 6 weeks out, registrations for your organization's upcoming annual meeting are down. What do? Send another email. Yes! I feel like we're playing Family Feud. This is the 100% answer, right? The sad part is that everyone said the same thing and I already had the slide ready. So we know it's true. We send more email. Does it work? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Does it make us feel like we're doing something? Absolutely. Do we care if it works or not? That's really the question. But why are we doing it? Fear. We're doing it because we're afraid of what might happen if we don't do it. Does it actually work? Who's looking at those conversion rates? Anybody? Okay. 1, 2 in the back. Excellent. All right, here's what we are going to try doing next time. And this is where things get difficult. As I believe, again, every speaker before me has pointed out, this is as much a cultural issue as it is a technology issue. I would venture it is more cultural than technology. It doesn't so much matter what systems you're using or what platforms you're on or whether you have HubSpot or Magnet Mail or MailChimp or you're calling people on the phone. What matters is the why and how your organization reacts to adversity. Do you panic and just start throwing spaghetti at the wall? Or do you have a plan? We'd rather get to a place where this never happened, right? But what would that plan look like? Are you just reacting or are you asking questions? When you just react, you're just doing something instinctively, you're sending out the email blast, it's what you've always done, it's always saved your bacon in the past, why would you change that? Or are you asking questions? Are you asking the right questions? What might those questions look like? Remember, we're trying to look at this differently. We're trying to shift our perspective, use the different lenses to think about this and work smart, not hard. Sending a bunch of email blasts to everybody because you don't want them to miss it just in case they might have missed it is not working smart. That's working hard because email blasts take time. You got people who have to craft the email, you have to QA it, you have to go generate the list, you have to dedupe the list, you have to load lists into the system, you have to send the email, you have to look at the bounce backs. That's all work. Let's work smarter. So let's go back to the e-blast and come up with a different list of what I believe to be some of the right questions. Where are we? What city are we in? Is this city? Well, yes, we're in Schaumburg. Thank you for that. Captain Obvious. Are we in New Orleans? Are we in Indianapolis? Are we in Anaheim? Are we in Minneapolis? Where are we? And what are our expectations for that city? Now, I work for a meetings management company. I fully admit that. We happen to know there are certain cities that outperform other cities, right? I mean, generally, if you go to Vegas, you can expect a 20% bump in your attendance. You can also expect that your session rooms are going to be empty. I'll tell you, as a conference leader, before I came to Experient, we ran a conference that was in Indianapolis, and we had our lowest year in 5 years. But we expected that. We knew that was coming. And so when the numbers were low, not only had we budgeted for it, we weren't surprised. We didn't panic because we knew that, I mean, Indianapolis is not going to draw the way Chicago does. Where are you underperforming? Where are you short? Are all the people that usually come to your meeting there and you're just short new people? Are you doing really well with people you've never seen before and your true blue have suddenly disappeared? Is there a segment, a demographic, people that wear a certain kind of shoes or people who, have pickup trucks that are not registering for some reason or other? I remember I was running a conference and we were doing a small event, like 700 people in San Antonio, right around the time that they were passing some legislation that was very unfriendly to certain kinds of people. We were a higher ed organization who were very, very conscious about that. And suddenly, people started backing out of our event. They didn't want to support the state of Texas at that particular time. Are there external factors that you may need to consider in not only what's going on with your registration, but also how you're recruiting, who you're going to market to? What's your performance within a drivable radius of the city? Let's look at 250 miles. Let's compare it to other cities within 250 miles. Are you doing better? Are you doing worse? What were your expectations? What's your membership density in a 250-mile radius of that particular city? If you have certain organizations, they have really heavy membership density in certain areas. A lot of medical associations are in Chicago. There's a lot of hospitals in Chicago. If you hold your event in Juneau, Alaska, how are you going to do? Probably not as well, possibly because it's not super drivable and because your membership density around Juneau, Alaska is probably not very heavy. So this, again, something you probably want to look at beforehand. When you're looking at cities and doing site selection, do you have a lot of people right there who are likely to come? And within 250 miles, do you think they're more likely to register right at the beginning or last minute? Probably last minute. They can make the decision. Maybe they don't even need a hotel. They can show up. It's easier. So if you're suddenly desperate and you're really not getting a lot of people within 250 miles, but you have heavy membership density and your numbers are down, there's your opportunity. You've got a group of people who are probably easier to recruit, who you're performing less than you normally have. There's your target. So you send them a specific email, not the, hey, it's our annual meeting, come register. You're really close. We'd love to offer you some kind of incentive or something to get you here. Different kind of targeted marketing. Targeted marketing campaigns, same general thing. How are your campaigns performing and with what kind of audiences? This is a different list of questions. This is not just blasting out email. And theoretically, these will perform better. You will do less work and you will get more return, which is what all of us want. And then member and non-member. Are you looking at your prospects? Are you looking at your members? Are you looking at people that have come for the last 10 years? How are you segmenting your audience and looking at that performance? Always look at the retention rate. So raise your hand if you know the overall churn for your conference year over year. Okay? If you run an association conference, you should have your hand in the air right now. And I'll be very, very blunt about that. We've got a couple shows that we work with that their churn is over 50%. And I keep telling them, if we can keep 10% of those people, that's a 5% increase in your overall attendance. Your goal is like, 2.3. So let's see what we can do to keep those people. Who are they? What do they want? Why are they coming? How are we marketing to them? And then all of a sudden, if your retention rate tanks, and normally your churn is, 48%, and this year suddenly it's 56%, something's going on. Maybe last year's conference wasn't that good. Go back and look at the evaluations and figure out if that's maybe why you're losing people. So another way that we can work smarter and not harder is understanding sort of the progression of what's available. Now, these are all event pieces. I work for an events company. We're going to step out of events after this slide and start talking about other stuff. But I want to give a specific example of sort of the progression of what you can know and how that informs the picture that's sitting behind these circles. The reason I put the circles on the picture is you can't tell me what the picture is. As we remove the circles and we learn more and we understand things, it will become easier. But it's really hard to see the full picture when you don't have all the data. So the first thing to go is going to be no measurement. The idea here is, how do we understand how people are interacting with a session? So a content session, right? We want to know about those people. A lot of times there's no measurement. So people are coming and going from sessions. There's no access control. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they were there. And we're just hoping that people enjoy our content. That's the first level. Okay, that's knowing basically as little as you can. We reveal another piece with a click counter at the door. That's somebody that stands there with a thing and clicks it as people walk by. So now what do we know? Head count. How many people were in the room? What does that really tell us? Popularity. We can get a general sense of what sessions were heavily attended. Do we know who was there? No. We can also look at sessions across time and say, well, these sessions, in these time blocks tend to be more heavily attended. That might be helpful. We can look at sessions in content tracks and say, these tracks seem to be more popular. That's better. An actual scanner at the door reveals one more piece of the puzzle. Anyone want to guess what it is yet? You think it's a kitty? I do like kitties, I have to admit. When you have someone scanning at the door, that gives you a couple things. One is access control, meaning people who didn't pay for a particular session can't get in, so that's good. It also gives you identification. So now you know who was in the room. So I can start to say things like, these demographic audiences preferred content of this type. These audiences are engaging with our program more deeply. You can start to draw insights out of it. Facial recognition is very much like having a door scanner, except it's cooler, right? Everyone loves facial recognition. I say the words facial recognition, every client of mine is like, ooh, how do we do that? Well, you put an iPad at the door and they look at it. It's not super complicated. No, it's a little worse than that. Seriously, I do have a client that they have a lounge, like a VIP high roller type lounge. And they had, a staffer standing at the door checking people just because they know them. Like that was the criteria to get in, is knowing this person who's on staff. And we were like, well, we could maybe do a little better than that. They're like, no, she knows everybody. She knows everybody. So they happened to run our behavioral measurement software, and we went and looked at the people that were in the lounge, and 60% of them were not paying people. They weren't supposed to be there. So we pointed that out, just to let them know. They were like, oh my gosh, what can we do? Well, we could scan people at the door. Oh, they don't want to be scanned. They don't like that. These are high rollers. Well, we could put an iPad there and do facial recognition. Ooh, how does that work? Like, well, it's a lot like being scanned, but they just look at the iPad. They're like, oh, well, that's cool, right? I'm like, yeah, it's very cool. They're like, oh, they'll like that. So all of a sudden we go from, we don't like it to it has bling and they like it. And then we can also control who's in the room and actually get the 60% of the people who shouldn't have been there to pay so that they have to get in. And now we have more money, which, as I said, they always like that. So that's facial recognition. And then the last and probably most comprehensive is behavioral measurement. To be full disclosure, we do a product that does this. There are other companies that also do products that do that, and I'm happy to tell you their names. You just put something in a room, and then you have stuff on the people, and you can tell who's there, how long they were there, what kind of person they were. You can attach all the demographic information to it. And all of a sudden, this entire universe of possibilities opens up into where individuals go, where demographic groups of people go, where specific audiences go, what they're engaging with, what content's most popular. If they told you they liked what kind of content, is it a different kind of content? I can see you all want to see the kitty. There's the kitty. Fine. Let's just get to the kitty. That's really the important part, right? So does that make sense? There's sort of this sequence. And I say that for a couple reasons. One is to give you a sense of what's possible. Two is to clarify that you don't have to go full hog at the beginning. If you just want to do someone clicking a thing, it's very low tech, it's very low cost, it is extremely unlikely to fail, because we know technology fails sometimes. And that might be a great way to gather some data that you can then use to inform the next strategic decision about how you're going to manage this process. And using that data is always a good thing. Where else can we use BI to work smarter? Everywhere. So this is what I was talking about. We take this idea, this principle, and we start applying it sideways. Anyone here involved with membership? Yeah. What do you think we could do with membership? Nothing? Oh, I saw that. Yeah. You're in my doghouse. No kitten pictures for you. Couple ideas. Look at your True Blue, your standard and your risk renewals, and communicate accordingly, right? So you have people that renew every year. They've renewed every year for the past 20 years. Are you sending them the same marketing materials you're sending someone who's only been there for 1 year? Or are you sending them something saying, wow, this is your 15th year with the association. We really appreciate your patronage, and we'd love to get you into this mentorship program to start our young volunteers to pair up with someone who's been with the association so you can show them the ropes. That's an opportunity. All of this is an opportunity to look differently at how you're communicating with people. Now, whether that's getting them to renew, because you know the people that have been there for 20 years, they're coming back for year 21. You don't have to pitch them. You want to thank them. You want to treat them differently. As opposed to someone who was a member for a year or two and then vanished for 2 years. You're going to go back with them with a re-up campaign. Completely different approach, right? Automated and AI-based communications, I'm imagining, Peggy, I missed the bit about HubSpot, but I'm guessing she already talked about this, so I'm not going to do a whole bit on it. But there are many tools out there that will put you through these specific workflows of what will happen. So if you do this, you get this email. If you respond to it, you get this. If you don't, you get the other thing. If you respond to that other one, then you go to this other chain. And it pushes you through this whole life cycle of how you interact. And it's automated. It's all set up ahead of time. So as long as you do a good job setting up all your if-then statements, you can have a really nice interactive feeling experience for your member without having to work super hard. Now imagine if you actually set these chains up in a way that your audiences would get different stuff. So again, there's an ability to differentiate and, dare I say, personalize this experience, which I also qualify as working smarter, not harder. If you're able to retain someone and make them happy and give them a better experience with less effort, that's exactly what we're trying to do, right? Champagne taste on a beer budget. They want the Amazon experience. Why I get it at Amazon, why can't you be more like Amazon? I know everyone in this room has heard that. Amazon, just so you know, has a $15 billion R&D budget. Anyone in here want to match that? Yeah. You wouldn't be here if you did. So it makes our lives kind of difficult. Our members are also consumers, and they have an expectation of behavior and of what they're going to get that matches Netflix and Spotify and all these other services that it's very hard for us to not compete with materially, but compete with from an experience perspective. Tailoring and personalization, we talked about that up front. To be fair, real personalization and customization of experience costs money. This is not free. Whether it's just the data side or the user experience side or the incentivization or the pieces that you're putting forward, there is an investment here. It is a capital investment, and this needs to come from an executive level. You can't just kind of do this by your bootstraps. You have to put something into it to get it to really work. Once you get it set up and configured and everything's running, much smaller footprint, you don't need to put as much in operationally, but up front, you got to put some money into this, and you should know that. And then the last piece, and I wanted to make sure we had, I think I'm going to 420, right? Or 425, a little further? I want to make sure the next slide we have some time to spend on it because I think it's important. For services and products, correlate member satisfaction with member ranked importance. To tell you what I mean by that, I'm going to show you an example. Garth is going to laugh because it's from Educause. Essentially what this is doing is ranking satisfaction and importance. How important is this to you and how well are we doing it? Now in this case we had a very, very high correlation. So you can see the stuff in the lower left is stuff that was less important and that we're not doing very well. And the stuff in the upper right is stuff that's really important that we are doing well. So when you go to your members and you ask them, what's most important to you and how are we doing with it? You can do a graph like this. And I recommend you do this because honestly for me, when I was with Educause, that was one of the most enlightening things I saw my entire tenure there. So what do these things mean? If it's in the lower left, low importance and low satisfaction, you're not doing it particularly well and they don't care. Why are you still doing it? Sunset it. Get rid of it. Associations don't like to sunset things. I think every speaker's also said that because it's true. This is a great way to quantify what you should get rid of. I'll say that again. I know ASAE published an entire booklet on how to sunset things because it's hard in associations. This is a great and relatively easy way to identify things you should get rid of. So if you're looking for data to support sunsetting something, this is an excellent way to figure out what you should be getting rid of. I won't say it again. Upper right corner, high satisfaction, high importance. Double down. Again, I'm just stealing everything that Grant said. This is where you focus your energies. This is where you focus your resources. This is where you're going to get great improvement, because it's stuff that's important and you're already doing it well. So either you market it harder, you look to acquire additional members or additional attendees in new markets. This is what you want to trot out to the rest of the world. The upper left is a little weird and dangerous. High importance, low satisfaction. This is really important to your members, and you're not doing it very well. So there's a couple options here. Fix it and make it better. Outsource it to a third party and have them do it better. Find a way to service this need. If you're not going to do it well, don't do it at all. Because you don't want to do something poorly and put that in front of your members. That gives them a bad experience. It's better just not to do it, because they'll find it somewhere else. Focus on what you do well. And then the lower right, low importance, high satisfaction. You're doing really great. Nobody cares. Do you keep it? Do you not? This depends. So I said leave or trim. You might want to cut this back, or you might want to just get rid of it, because again, nobody cares. I mean, if this is one of these programs you're doing for 50 people and your membership is 17,000, you know, are you winning? Are you making money on it? Are you wasting resources on it? Like, are you putting thought equity into it? Is it growing? Take a close look at those. And I'll steal from Ariana. If you're going to come out of here with nothing, I think this is probably my favorite slide in the deck. And I see people taking pictures, which is great. But this is a great framework, and it's relatively easy. You can send out one member survey and have all the data you need to populate this. So all of a sudden, it takes, you know, a couple weeks of effort, and you've got a really nice tool to at least start these conversations. And that's what I call working smarter, right? This is something you can take to your executive team. This is something you can take to a management meeting. Whatever you need, be aware. This will start a much, much larger conversation. So be ready for that and be prepared. Anyone in marketing? Yeah, we got some stuff for you too. So understand the difference between marketing and sales. Anyone have difficulty with this at their organizations? Yeah, I'll give you the analogy that, not an analogy, but the explanation that I use. When you see the ad for the car dealership on television and it tells you about the car and its features and whatnot, that's marketing. When you go to the dealership and the guy won't stop saying, "How can I get you into a vehicle today?" That's sales. So from the trade show perspective, our job and the job of the show organizer is to get people into the hall. The booth job is to engage with those people and have meaningful interactions. We're marketing, they're sales. Okay? Make sure everybody understands the difference. Because if they're talking about, well, you need to put butts in seats, that's not marketing. Marketing is raising awareness. You can use data to do that really effectively. Conversion and sales get butts in seats. If you have crap content, it doesn't matter how well you market it. Sales is more than that, right? So as long as everybody understands that. Split tests, you should always be running split tests. This is a scientific process. You should always have a control group in what you're doing for marketing. Because if you do the whole group because you're damn sure it's a good idea and you look at the results, you have nothing to compare them to. You have to have a control group. Yes, it takes more time. Yes, you can't run the great marketing piece you just created for everybody. But what you will prove is that the great marketing piece you created is 18% more likely to convert somebody. Next time, you can use that as your baseline, right? So patience and process. You have to have both. Use recent past behavior and engagement to shape targeted marketing campaigns. We talked about that already. Know, maintain, and have a plan for each of your audiences. Do you know what you need to do to have and maintain a plan for each of your audiences? You need to identify your audiences. Yeah, and that can be hard all by itself, because then your executives will say things like, but wait, one of these is more important than the other. I'm not comfortable with that. Well, guess what? One of these is more important than the other. Who are your important audiences and why? Is it the ones that give you the most revenue? Is it the ones that generate your volunteers? Is it people from the board? Is it your biggest members? Who's most important? Prioritize. It's hard, really hard, but you have to do it, because if you don't, you're just throwing everything at everybody, and we know where that ends up, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Okay? Don't do that. Do this instead. Avoid data decay. Technically, I shouldn't have put this bullet point in, because you can't avoid data decay. It's just something that happens. Try not to use older data would be a better bullet point. If you think about the profile information you have that John Q. Public put into your system 3 years ago when they signed up to be a member of your organization, how relevant is that information now? Might they have changed jobs? Might they have changed titles? Might they have changed duties? Is that going to affect what they're interested in? Yes. After a year, 3 years, 5 years, think about what you were doing 5 years ago. How relevant is that to what you're doing right now? Would you want the same marketing, the same content, the same information, the same features and benefits? Or would you want something different? So data decay is a real thing. The more recent the data, the more valuable it is. But all data decays over time. And then I'm going to echo Garth one more time. Quality, not quantity. Sending everything to everybody is not a great strategy. It annoys them. It actually costs you more money and more effort and more time. It's not the best way to go about it. So quality, make it count. That's what's going to get you people, and that's what's going to get you efficiency. I am at time. Any questions? That was a lot of me talking. I apologize. But thank you. You were a lovely audience. Oh, question. Sorry. Ariana has a question. Nope, no clapping.
You're continuing there, the importance and, yes. How would you measure importance? Would it be self-reporting, or is there some other metadata?
Generally, first you're going to go with self-reporting. I would love to do this with behavioral measurement technology and be able to, instead of asking people what's important, because they're going to tell you one thing and then they're going to do something else. There's always a delta between self-reported and actual behavior. This I can promise you, because it's what I do for a living. And the example I used to use was, if you, in the 90s, you asked 10,000 people if they were Britney Spears fans, how many are going to admit it? And yet she's a multi-platinum recording artist. So obviously, again, what they tell you and what actually happens are two very different things. If you were to take behavioral measurement data and use that as your importance data, so the things that are most important to most people, and then just ask them how it goes, or even correlate what they did with their satisfaction data, if you have those evaluations, you could theoretically do it without having to ask them, which would be obviously best case scenario, but unlikely that most organizations are in that situation. So probably easiest at the beginning, at least, first steps, if you go and survey and ask yourself. Other questions? Okay, now the clapping. Thank you.